and there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment from very high above all the puerile and mendacious forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Thursday. Well, the Democrat Party is in a full-blown panic. Well, of course, they always are. With them, it's always, hopping from one crisis to the next, one outrageous moment to the next. The lovely Christine characterized this as the behavior of an addict. Now, an addict moves from one crisis to another one, from this fix all the way, and the goal is to find the next fix. And with the Democrats, it's really no different, that it is a matter of moving from one crisis to the next, one outrageous moment to the next, one moment of outrage to the next. It really is the behavior of an addict. And just like every addict that you've ever known, they don't really know how to handle normal. When everything is just kind of even keel and everything's going good, generally speaking, it's those type of people that always have to have drama. You know the folks that I'm talking about, the folks that just cannot have everything to be completely calm. There has to be drama. And where there isn't drama, they will create it. Because that's how they live their life. And so that is what you are seeing with what the Democrat Party is doing right now. And their most recent one is, and I know that you've heard this before, but their most recent trope is affordability. What is affordability? Well, the truth is it doesn't really mean anything to them. You notice they don't tell you exactly what is unaffordable, how it got that way, or how we can make it so that it is affordable. Nope. It is just another talking point. It is no different than other words that have connotations to them. A connotation is the meaning surrounding a word. So for example, the word racist. Democrats use that one all of the time. And the reason that they do is it requires no other proof to it. That you can call somebody a racist and you don't have to provide any other documentation because the connotations surrounding the word are so terrible that they can just use it and then it conjures up images in your mind. Well, the same holds true for affordability, except, this is kind of a new concept and many of us, it's a bright and shiny object. And because it's a new talking point, it sounds like it's the new crisis. But let's just talk about what is and what is not affordable. 4 years ago, or 5 years ago now, things were actually pretty good. Gas wasn't that expensive. Your groceries weren't that terrible. For a long time, the price of just about everything has gone up. And that is a function of inflation. What, pray tell, is inflation? Well, that's actually money printing. That's all that it is. So the federal government prints money, and the more money that you have, the more cash you have out in the market. Well, it changes the prices of everything. And it's no different than let's say that you have 5 apples and I walk up to you and I say, "Hey, those apples look pretty tasty. Can I have one?" And you might look at me and say, "Well, David, that one apple, it represents 20% of my whole supply. It's pretty valuable." But what if you had 100 apples and I walked up to you and asked you the same question? "Hey, that apple looks pretty tasty. Can I have one?" You'd probably hand one over right away because that one apple only represents 1% of your entire supply. The same holds true for cash. If you have only $10 to your name, well, getting rid of one of them, that's pretty valuable to you. But if you have 100 of them, maybe that $1 doesn't make that much difference. And that's how money printing and inflation works. The more money you have in the market, the less it is worth. And so, but that's just the monetary part of it. The prices of everything, the value of everything else, the goods, groceries, motorcycles, guns, whatever, that value doesn't change. It's the value of the money that changes. And so to produce goods, you still have to have the same raw materials. You still have to pay the same people to build whatever it is that you're building. And so you have to pay them more because that dollar is worth less. To put it another way, let's say it's 100 years ago and you have a gold dollar in your pocket. What could you buy with that gold dollar? Well, you could probably buy 2 pretty nice suits. Now, fast forward 100 years to now, and you have that same gold dollar in your pocket. And what is it worth? Well, the spot price of gold right now is, it's around $4,000 an ounce. I haven't checked it in a while, but I mean, that's a pretty good round number. So what could you buy with $4,000? 2 pretty nice suits. So it is not the value of the gold that changed. It's the value of the dollar. And so when you talk about the Democrats' so-called affordability crisis, it's really a creature of their own making, that the more you increase inflation, the more things cost and the less your dollar is worth. And, it's probably a more stark comparison is the price of silver. Now, gold, okay, it's $4,000 an ounce. Holy crap. I remember years ago, 10 years ago, where I thought to myself, if gold reaches $2,000 an ounce, holy crap, what is going on in our country? Well, now it's double that. And the same question still applies. Holy crap, what's going on? Well, you see, investors, like big time investors, millionaires, depending on how things are in the country, how stable the economy is, determines a lot of what they invest in. If everything's going good and everything's normal, well, you probably just invest in the stock market. You'll find a couple of companies that you like and you'll buy stock of them. Well, when things get a little dicey, when the economy is not going so great, maybe you ease off on the stock investing and you focus on these things called TIPS. Treasury inflation protected securities. So those are a little bit more solid, but when things get really dicey, well, you forget about those treasuries. That's just a piece of paper. And we all know what the federal government thinks about your paper. I mean, they print a lot of it. So obviously they don't really care too much about what's in your pocket. So then you invest in gold because gold has never lost value. And I mean, the same holds true for everything else. And, if you want to know why the cost of your eggs goes up and down, well, it's inflation because you still have to produce, or you still have to pay the people that work on the farms. You still have to pay to feed the chickens. You still have to pay to go collect the eggs and run your equipment and, pay all the bills and all of that. But it is the value of money. And so when we're discussing so-called affordability, the question is, who caused it to be unaffordable? From Breitbart, Democrats' cafe standards underscore the party's that the affordability rhetoric is alive. What are the cafe standards? Those are the mileage per gallon standards that the Biden administration put on all new cars. And I don't exactly remember what they were, but a new vehicle has to be able to do 30 miles to the gallon. Okay, well, that there are certain things that car manufacturers have to do to make that happen. There has to be emissions controls. There has to be, it costs more to produce a vehicle. And so it costs more to buy a vehicle. And the other thing it didn't really help is all of the mandates that car companies had to produce electric vehicles, no matter how much they had to charge for them. I read an article, maybe it was last year, year before, but that Ford Motor Company was losing money on every single electric vehicle that they produced. And it's not that there wasn't a demand for them. It's just that the demand was really, really low. And so the market would dictate that when you have a low demand of a product that you're producing, you don't produce as much of them. But the Biden administration put mandates on car manufacturers that they had to produce so many electric vehicles. So how do you account for that loss? Well, you have to make it up somewhere. And so you increase the price of all of the vehicles that you produce. From Breitbart, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy said Wednesday that the Democrat narrative about affordability is proven a lie by the left-wing fuel efficiency standards imposed on automakers, which have driven up car prices. It's for the very reasons that I just explained. Duffy spoke to the effects of the Biden-era corporate average fuel economy, or CAFE, standards at an Oval Office press conference alongside the president, announcing that they were resetting the standards. Quote, yesterday at the cabinet meeting, the president was talking about affordability, and the way Democrats talk about affordability is a lie. Biden and Buttigieg used EVs and hybrids to come up with a 62 mile an hour per gallon standard, which car companies will tell you is completely unattainable. And I've got a piece of video that I'm going to play for you in just a second, but President Trump in the video mentions that the Democrats wanted to do away with the combustion engine in favor of electric vehicles. Well, in order to get that 62 mile an hour, and just think about this. When is the last time that you were able to buy a vehicle that got 30 miles to the gallon? Well, it's not a pickup. It's not a four-wheel drive. It's probably not a car that's going to do that well in Wyoming. It's going to be a small motor, a smaller car. And even then, getting 40 miles to the gallon is going to be pushing it. He noted that this forced automakers to spend big on technology in trying to reach the standard and cost them billions in carbon trades if they couldn't meet it. You remember the whole cap and trade thing? The thing that we thought that we were getting rid of? Well, it never really went away. When the Democrats got power, they put in standards on manufacturers that pretty much de facto created that cap and trade system. Quote, so they spent a lot of money on technology trying to meet an unattainable standard, driving up the cost of a car. Number two, if they couldn't meet the unattainable standard, they had to trade for carbon, costing billions of dollars, and again, driving up the price of cars. The Department of Transportation, under Secretary Buttigieg, announced in April of 2022 a rule increasing fuel efficiency standards on automakers by 8% for cars and light trucks built between 2024 and 2025, followed by a 10% increase on the 2026 model. So you add all that together, that's an 18% increase in the efficiency of a vehicle. The Biden DOT announced a 2% per year increase from 2027 to 2031 for model passenger cars and from 2029 to 2031 for light trucks in April of 2024. Duffy told reporters that Democrats, quote, were not making cars more affordable. They were making them less affordable because it costs more to produce a car, which means that it costs more to buy a car. As the secretary pointed out, Trump called out Democrats on their affordability narrative on Tuesday after Biden inflation unleashed major affordability problems for Americans. Let's see here. Quote, I inherited the worst inflation in history. There was no affordability. Nobody could afford anything. The prices were massively high, he said, before acknowledging Agricultural Secretary Brooke Rollins and her work. All right, so let's go ahead and play the video. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about the politics surrounding that stupid word affordability, because it's something that you have heard before. This is nothing different. The words change, but the method stays the same. And it's always the same. Say nothing, say as little as possible, and try to confuse everything that anybody says. So here is Trump in the Oval Office talking about the stupid CAFE standards.
Today, my administration has taken historic action to lower costs for American consumers, protect American auto jobs, and make buying a car much more affordable for countless American families and also safer. We're officially terminating Joe Biden's ridiculously burdensome, horrible actually, CAFE standards that imposed expensive restrictions and all sorts of problems, gave all sorts of problems to automakers. And we're not only talking about here, we're talking about outside of our country, because nobody could do it. Nobody wanted to do it, and it was ridiculous, very expensive.
All right. Hold on just a second. Then we'll get back to the video. So these fuel economy standards didn't just apply to vehicles that were produced in the United States. They applied to vehicles that were imported as well. And so when you import a car and you have to abide by it's an amazing thing. Yeah, so you didn't have any sound there. That was crazy. Okay, so anyway, it applies to imported vehicles as well as those vehicles that were produced here. So let's continue with the video.
It put tremendous upward pressure on car prices, combined with the insane electric vehicle mandate. Biden's burdensome regulations helped cause the price of cars to soar more than 25%, and in one case they went up 18% in 1 year. Today we're taking one more step to kill the Green New scam. It's part of the greatest scam probably, well, other than Russia, and a few others I could name. The greatest scam in American history, the Green New scam, and it's a quest to end the gasoline-powered car. This is what they wanted to do, even though we have more gasoline than any other country by far. And people want the gasoline car. They want everything. They want electric. They want to have lots of alternatives, but they do want the gasoline car. Right now, it's leading away by a lot. The car business is a very interesting business, but we want to keep it that way.
Well, and there you have it. It's all politics, and none of it really has to do with anything in reality. That it is something that sounds good that you came up with in a university building, and all of your egg-headed buddies around you said, "Hey, this is a grand idea. Let's go ahead and do it." But see, the Democrats, they never really look at the reality on the ground. It's all theory to them. It's no different than their ideas about socialism and communism and you name the ism that comes out of the mouth of Democrats. None of them have any conception as to whether or not this actually works in the real world. And the truth is, most of their ideas don't. So when we bring up this stupid idea of affordability, what are they saying? Well, at first, their politics never change. And so once you understand that, really the word doesn't mean anything. It's no different than, you remember when you were in school, or at least when I was in school, it was global warming. And then all of a sudden, it changed to climate change. And the reason why the words changed is because they found out that, well, the world wasn't really warming, but they still wanted this whole climate business. And so they changed the narrative to climate change so that they can still talk about the same thing, but the words they're telling you are completely different. And so you think it's something different. And they can, and climate change, man, you could use it for anything. The same holds true for affordability. That's exactly what they're doing because it doesn't have a definition to it. They're not talking about any one thing in particular. I mean, they may as well be discussing widgets as far as you're concerned. But they can use the trope of affordability. Well, what he's doing is was decreasing the affordability of what everything you have to buy. That law that you're passing down in Cheyenne. Well, it's gonna decrease affordability, right? You don't have to explain anything. It's just like the word racist or anything like that. It just has a bunch of negative connotations to it, and so really, it doesn't mean anything. But it does tell you one very important thing, that the Democrats are grasping for any sort of message going into the 2026 midterms because they don't have anything. Now, the economy is doing relatively well, and that's why they chose the term affordability, because it leads you to believe that things, well, I mean, if I'm arguing for affordability, it must mean that things aren't affordable right now. I mean, it is no more intelligent than that, my friends. It doesn't mean anything, and frankly, you should just completely ignore everything that they're saying. You hear the word affordability come out of their mouth, you should just turn around and walk away and not listen to anything else they have to say. And it's it's just it's the same thing the Democrats do all of the time, that there really isn't any substance to any of the things that they argue for. Which is why you should never really vote for the Democrats at all, because when it comes down to it, when they are actually voting on legislation, you'll find out that they really don't have a plan at all. I always find it fascinating when the Democrats get up on the floor down in Cheyenne, because rarely do they talk about the conditions as they are on the ground. It is almost always theory. And the best example, two examples of that, of course, there's only 6 of them, so can't really be that many examples, but it's Mike Yin and Carly Provenza, and they will find the most creative ways to push their Democrat agenda into anything. So, for example, there was and I'm going to talk about this here in just a little bit. It's on the top of the stack of stuff. But the bill up for debate was concerning abortion. And it was the Life is a Human Right Act. Well, out comes an amendment from, I believe it was Mike Yin that brought the amendment, that said, well, if life is a human right, that means we should do away with the death penalty in Wyoming. Has nothing to do with abortion, nothing to do with it. He just says, he comes out with the amendment. He says, hey, man, if life is a human right, we should completely do away with the death penalty. And there was no discussion as to the merits of that amendment. No, it was just a classic Democrat talking point that the death penalty is bad. Even though, I mean, there's lots of evidence to point out that actually deterrence sort of works. So anyway, I mean, the Democrats do the same thing all the time. Don't pay any attention to this affordability thing. And by the way, if you hear a Republican utter that word affordability, it is not. I mean, they are not.
My administration is taking historic.
Maybe I should do away with that video. But if you hear a Republican talking about affordability, make sure that you just completely ignore everything they have to say. Because the truth is, in Wyoming, there are a ton of people that they run as Republicans because they know that if they ran as a Democrat, it would be it would be near impossible to get elected. Man, I'm having trouble talking this morning. But if you hear a Republican utter that word affordability, that's your first clue that you need to get the heck away from them and don't pay any attention whatsoever to what they're talking about. Similarly, the video that the Seditious Six brought out. Now, I don't know if they're sedition, but I haven't really talked about this on the program, and so I thought we may as well talk about it. This is from the Daily Wire. The Democrat Party's two-pronged 2028 strategy: military chaos and moderate messaging. That's what the whole affordability thing is about. It's about the Democrats moderating their tone. They know that Americans are pretty well fed up with the radical leftist agenda that we've just lived through for the past 4 years. Well, through the Biden administration anyway. And so they have to moderate the tone, right? I just gave you lots of examples of how their efficiency standards increase the price of everything. So now, instead of doing that, now it's affordability, because that makes sense while you're sitting around the kitchen table talking about things that you want to spend money on and whether you can afford something or not. It makes sense. But really what the Democrats are doing is just moderating their messaging. And I quote, "One of the strategies is to make members of the military truly uncomfortable about following their orders. The Democrats apparently believe that this will somehow create unrest and chaos." Now, I don't know. I don't really know how else to explain why Democrats are now suddenly coming out of the woodwork to suggest that a bunch of illegal orders are being issued from the Trump administration that members of the military must now consider. When Democrats such as Senator Mark Kelly or Senator Alyssa Slotkin from Michigan say to soldiers and to airmen and to members of the Navy, quote, if you guys follow an illegal order, you'll be punished. But then they don't define what the word illegal order is or what the phrase illegal order means. What they're doing is creating a catch-22 situation that you can either do what you're supposed to do, follow orders, or you could be punished for them. And that's because if people follow orders, they're protected in the moment. But down the road, some Democrats may be elected and declare retroactively that those orders were illegal. Members of the military should not have obeyed them, and therefore they could end up in court. Thus, it's a catch-22 for members of the military, and that's why this is so terrible. All of that is prong number one in the Democrat strategy, to create military chaos. A strategy surrounding the commander-in-chief, but it also serves their other purposes, to increase illegal immigration, to decrease the amount of prosecutions that are happening in the country, to increase the ability for criminals to get away with whatever they want to get away with. Because if they do that, there's more. It's more likely that they can make the argument that crime isn't a problem with criminals. It's a social problem. Therefore, we need more social workers. The illegal immigration problem. No person is illegal. That's just poppycock. We have to have more people come into this country. And why don't you want these poor, suffering, miserable people to come into the country and make a better life for themselves? Because they're going to all become Democrat voters. But that's their theory. But prong number two is setting up an entire slate of possible Democratic nominees that appear to be more moderate. And that's the part that I want to get to here. It is about the video, but it's also about the messaging going into the 2026 midterm. And when we come back from the break, I'm going to tell you all about it. Back in a minute. Yeah, I know. The weather seems to be toying with us. 60 one day, 42 the next, and pretty soon, my friends, those 6s and 4s are going to turn into 3s and 2s. Though we all want to avoid it, that white stuff is coming, my friends, and you will be shoveling the walk in it. It's cold, it's unpleasant, and nobody likes to do it. But you could make it just a little bit more comfortable and prevent your feet from turning into a giant block of ice. In fact, you could keep them nice and warm and toasty, and your toes will never even know that they're outside. The rest of you may be frozen solid, but at least your feet won't be. To make all this happen, you just need a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listen to the president just a little bit too closely and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way.
Cowboy State Politics is only going to get stronger. It's incredible what I'm doing on this program. The podcast, which you can listen to every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, Cowboy State Politics Live. This program, which you can watch every Tuesday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. And don't forget about the Outrider, the Cowboy State Politics newsletter that is going to be released today, shortly after I finish today's program. It's the official newsletter of Cowboy State Politics. You know, there are just some people that prefer to read as opposed to watch or listen, and I get that. But see, I got to get them all. You got to capture the entire audience, which is why I started the newsletter. If you have not signed up for it yet, go to cowboystatepolitics.com, and the very first thing you'll see is a pop-up that says, join our newsletter. You put your email address in there and hit submit. It'll send your email directly to me, and I'll get you on the mailing list. So issue number 3 of the Outrider will go out today. You should get it before 12 o'clock, I would think. But I'll get it out this right after today's program. And also, man, I cannot wait to tell you about the Outrider or I see there's so much stuff going on. The Open Range Record. We're starting a brand new news service, and it's I have a whole new respect for people that make mobile apps, even the ones that, you know, the really dumb little ones, the solitaire app that you download, or, you know, maybe it's a calculator or something, but there's a lot that goes into producing one of those, and I have a whole brand new respect for them. And that's why it's taken me so long to put this whole thing together. And but anyway, it's going to be awesome. I'm really proud of it. And right now I'm just kind of fine-tuning everything. And then my hope is to get it released here pretty soon, or at least get the beta testing started. There's a lot of testing that you have to go through, but it'll definitely be ready before the legislative session, which is kind of the whole point. All right, so before the break, we were talking about what the Democrats are doing. Well, the big one, the attention-grabbing thing that they did was the video. Right? You have to question illegal orders. Don't follow illegal orders or you'll end up in prison. Okay, that was pretty bad. Frankly, I don't know that it's sedition. I mean, sedition is, you know, giving aid and comfort to the enemy, working against the direct interests of the United States of America. I don't know that I would go that far. I mean, it's bad. It's creating chaos. You're a high-ranking government official, and you are elected official, rather, and you're telling the military, hey, you know, there might be some orders you don't have to follow. And think about it. If you're a buck private and you're, you know, brand new in the military, and you hear Senator Mark Kelly repeating that ridiculous stuff, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think that it creates a lot of chaos. But that's the attention-grabbing thing. That's the one. Pay attention to this over here. Don't pay any attention to what this hand is doing over here. That's always been the Democrat strategy, and they've never changed it, my friends. So the other thing they're doing is they're moderating their tone. And, you know, when's the last time you heard one of these big Democrats come out and talk about equity? What about trans issues? You know, men playing in women's sports and all those. When's DEI? When have you heard a congressional Democrat go hard over for any of those things? Well, it's been a few months, right? Well, they realize that that's not where the American public is at. Even their base is moving away from that. And to win an election, well, they're going to have some of the people in the squishy middle, and that's what they're doing. That's what this whole affordability thing is all about, because they're trying to get back to talking about things that families discuss at their kitchen table. By all indicators, it appears that the Democrats are not necessarily morons, and I've since the very beginning of Cowboy State Politics, I've told you that, in fact, the Democrats aren't morons at all. Actually, they're kind of smart, and at least they're honest about who they are, which is one of the really smart things that they do. But anyway, you know, it depends on who they've got in power. When they have the reins of power and they can do whatever they want, well, then there's no reason for them to just not go buck wild on any of their ridiculous ideas, which is what they did in the Biden administration. But now we have people like Zoran Mamdani. Okay, he gets elected. He is a straight up communist. And, you had a lot of people in the Democrat Party endorse him. But if you'll notice, there were a lot of big name Democrats that were very, very, very hesitant to even go anywhere near that guy because they know exactly who he is and they know where their voters are at. And so they're not going to endorse a radical communist. So people like Zoran Mamdani may be winning in places like New York or that woman over in Seattle. But the Democrats, they're actually trying to play the moderate card a little bit more. It appears more and more often that they're playing dead on the trans issue. Now, and that's another point. So have Democrats changed their opinion on all of these issues? The answer to that is no. No, they actually believe that sort of stuff. But there's a difference between what they believe and what they say. And so it's just because you're not hearing it come out of their mouth does not mean that they wouldn't do that same sort of thing in a heartbeat. They're just trying to change the Democrat lexicon. You don't hear Democrats talking about equity in the same way, quoting now, that they were even a year and a half ago, when that was all the end-all be-all of the Democrat talking point. Even on immigration, Democrats have taken a slightly more middle-of-the-road tone. Some of them are even admitting, Trump is largely right on the border. I know. I just spent the last 4 years calling him Hitler and every other thing under the sun about his immigration policy. But now, all of a sudden, well, he might be right about all that stuff. You see what's changing here? Democrats seem to be at least an image of turning towards the middle. That's part of what's going on with the controversy surrounding Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. And, okay, so I happen to agree with targeting drug boats. I think that's an attack on this country, a subversive one. I think that it's absolutely an attempt to kill thousands, if not millions, of Americans. It is absolutely being done intentional, and it's pretty exploitative. Countries like Venezuela, they make a tremendous amount of money off of the drug habits of some Americans. But I happen to agree with blowing up these drug boats. I do think it's an attack. I do think it's an intent to harm our country, and absolutely, our commander-in-chief has the right. No, he has the duty to protect the integrity of the United States. And these are the cartels are designated as terrorist organizations. And this is an interesting one. Nobody really bats an eye when we use a drone to take out a terrorist over in Afghanistan. In fact, some of the people on the left actually celebrate that. But when we do the exact same thing in this hemisphere, that is in this half of the world, somehow now it's a war crime. But just examine for a moment what they're doing. How are the two situations similar? Well, they're pretty much the same thing. Al-Qaeda is a terrorist organization. Drug cartels are a terrorist organization. If you can take them out, you do. The only difference is the proximity to the U.S. and how the Democrats might be able to use it. All of that being said, I think that there is at least a credible argument to be made that maybe that's wrong. I completely disagree with that, but there is an argument to be made. And that's where the Democrats are at. Supposedly, Hegseth ordered everyone to be killed. I don't think that's what happened at all, up to and including survivors who were in the water clinging to the wreckage of the burning boat. This raised some fairly significant legal issues because, as it turns out, under the laws of war, under the Geneva Convention, and under American law, you're not supposed to kill people who are no longer in the fight. They are prisoners. Okay, but is that really what happened? Are they really prisoners? I mean, are they really people who have said, nope, I'm done, take me in? No, they're not. They got in a boat that was loaded down with narcotics headed for the U.S. border. In other words, you can't take somebody as a POW and then shoot them, and that's what the Democrats are arguing. But there is the possibility that these people would not be considered to be POWs, depending on the condition of the boat. And the boat may be dead in the water, but at the same time, they could call their narco-trafficking pals. That's one possible defense. The contention here is that the general order given to take out the boat, that possibly Admiral Bradley is the person who actually gave the order to conduct a second strike, if in fact a second strike was conducted. The New York Times published a follow-up piece saying they've got 5 people. I don't know if you've heard this or not, but the New York Times published a piece that said, "Hey, we've got 5 people that say that's not what happened. Here's what Hegseth said. He said take them all out," or whatever it is. Now, all of this seems to be pretty convenient, if you ask me. It's a way of providing support to Democrats who released the video that told reporters of the military plot, or told the military not to obey orders. But it's all ginned up. It's all it's all a Democratic plan, maybe plot, whatever. But it feels as though the Washington Post went ahead and reported the story on extraordinarily thin sourcing to create the possibility of an illegal order. So to create this cloud of suspicion around the Secretary of War. Now, it feels like the predicate for a move by the Democrat Party to elevate somebody like, Senator Mark Kelly, for example. He's a former astronaut who tends to portray himself as moderate. He's not. There are pictures of him with Alex Soros, the son of George Soros. So he's not moderate at all, but he's an astronaut. And, there's some stuff to be made there. So they could elevate him and, put himself out. They put him out as moderate. And even though he voted with Joe Biden in the Senate almost all of the time. Okay. So what they say is different than what reality is. But they'll wait until they gain power before they turn on that spigot. What they're talking about is 2028. So they don't have, and I've talked about this several times on the program, that the Democrats' bench is actually pretty thin. It was worse than the Rangers' bullpen after 12 innings. Okay, hopefully the Rangers do better this year, God willing. They got rid of my guy, but we got Brandon Nimmo, the ball player from Cheyenne, so I'm all in favor of that. Anyway, their bench is not very deep. And, the people that are the front runners for the 2028 Democrat nomination are Gavin Newsom, Kamala Harris. Really? I mean, those people are not going to win. They don't have a snowball's chance in August on a Wyoming prairie. I mean, there's no way that they're going to be able to win. And so they have to find some people that they could elevate as moderate because they know, the last election showed them that Americans are pretty well right in the middle of everything, that they're moderating everything, and that their radical ideology, DEI, equity, all the trans stuff, all of that stuff is not resonating with American voters. And so one of their answers may possibly be Mark Kelly. And if you'll notice, some of the more radical candidates, there are people like AOC and, Ayanna Pressley and, Ilhan Omar. We'll talk about her a little bit later on in the program, that are totally on board with endorsements for those types of folks. But the majority of them, the majority know that where they ought to put their money is with more moderate candidates, which is what they're doing. And I'm not saying that Mark Kelly's going to be their guy, but if you think about it, it's a lot easier sell than is Hakeem Jeffries or AOC or Alyssa Slotkin or any of those people. At least you could trot him out and say, hey, this guy was a Democrat. He's in the military. Look at how wholesome he is. Fine up, whatever lie they want to make up about him. But at least he's sellable, that you can create a sales pitch around him. And that's what this whole thing is about. The affordability, the moderating of their tone. It's no more complicated than the Democrats creating, a sales narrative. Hey, look at us. We're not those crazy people that we were 4 years ago. Go ahead and vote for us. Absolutely bizarre. But many of them believe in things like abortion. You remember in the last election, there was lots of Democrat talking points about how abortion was the issue that they were going to run on, that these evil Republicans, they're taking away a woman's right to choose. Well, no, they're not. They're just protecting somebody else's rights who can't speak for themselves yet and won't be able to speak for themselves for, 18 years. From the Federalist, Justice Thomas dismantles New Jersey's lawfare against pro-life center with a single question. I love Clarence Thomas, and on the rare occasions that you get to listen to him talk, he's absolutely incredible. But here's what the Federalist says. Associate Justice Clarence Thomas has often employed simple questions to underscore key factual points during oral arguments before the Supreme Court. On Tuesday, he did just that. The most recent example came during the High Court's hearing of First Choice Women's Resource Centers versus Platkin, which centers around New Jersey's targeting of the state-based First Choice Women's Resource Center. As the Federalist previously reported, New Jersey Attorney General Matthew Platkin, a Democrat, issued a sweeping subpoena to the pro-life organization seeking years' worth of data, such as internal communications and details on their donors. The subpoena was part of an investigation based on concerns that the group was misleading its donors. First Choice filed a suit in federal court alleging that the subpoena sought to chill its First Amendment rights and associations with donors. The group ultimately appealed to the Supreme Court after a federal district court and Third Circuit Court of Appeals dismissed its suit as unripe. Both lower courts argued that the matter couldn't be examined in federal court due to ongoing state proceedings and the fact that First Choice had yet to been enforced. In his line of questioning to Platkin's counsel, Sundeep Iyer is the guy's name, Thomas asked the defendant about the Democrat Attorney General's rationale for investigating First Choice to begin with. He specifically probed whether Platkin received, quote, any complaints that formed the basis of his concern about the fundraising activities. So in other words, what was the probable cause that led you to believe that there was some nefarious activity happening with this Women's Resource Center? Iyer seemingly attempted to skirt the justice's question. He began by saying that they, quote, certainly had complaints about crisis pregnancy centers, but was cut off by Clarence Thomas, who more specifically asked about this crisis pregnancy center. In a stunning admission, Iyer acknowledged that the Attorney General's office hasn't had any complaints about this specific center, claiming that he thinks this was made clear from the outset. The answer prompted Thomas to interject and ask, quote, so you had no basis to think that First Choice was deceiving any of their contributors. Iyer disagreed with the summation and claimed that Platkin and his team had carefully canvassed all the public information that is provided on its website of First Choice. And okay, so in other words, they went to the website and they thought maybe somebody had made a complaint. But, and Thomas asked again, but you had no factual basis, Thomas asked, to which the lawyer disagreed, to which Thomas said, but you had no complainants, Thomas more specifically asked. And then the reply, we had no complaints, but the state governments, the federal government initiate investigations all the time in the absence of complaints where they have reason to suspect that there could be potential issues of legal compliance. It could, okay, so in other words, what this is show me the man, I'll show you the crime. That's what's happening here, that we don't actually have a person that's complaining about anything that's being done. It's just we think that there may be, that it's possible that they have complaints. Really, what it is the New Jersey Attorney General's disagreement with the ideas that maybe abortion and killing babies is wrong. That's what it was all about. In his response, Thomas seemed unconvinced. The Bush appointee noted that the state's reasoning seems to be a burdensome way to find out whether someone has a confusing website. That's what the investigation was about. Circling back to the disagreement with First Choice's characterization of why they were being put to this, Thomas further noted that, quote, it would seem that the obvious way to refute this, that was to say, we had 100 complaints, but you say that you have none. But rather, you looked at the website and their materials, and you think that they might be misleading. So why is your characterization any better than theirs? Thomas asked. In his response, Iyer attempted to justify the investigation by highlighting 4 bucket areas of concern. And he ended up having to say, we had no complaints, but I think that, Your Honor, that goes most to its merits. That doesn't go to the standing analysis. Okay, right. So it's a lawyer trick to try to get around. But you'll notice that it was these simple questions, right? So wait a minute. Who exactly was complaining about this? Why is it that you had to start an investigation? You thought their website was a little misleading. But see, this is what Democrats do all of the time with this lawfare, is that it is they are always a perfect example of show me the man, I'll show you the crime, which is what I can't remember if it was Stalin or if it was Lenin that said that, but it was one of them. Show me the man, I'll show you the crime. It's what they tried to do to President Trump. They had to destroy him and try to prevent him from being the 47th president of the United States. And so that's why they raided Mar-a-Lago. But nothing that they could have found at Mar-a-Lago was at all illegal. But they did the raid anyway because they thought they could find some evidence. Now, keep in mind, it was the same thing that Joe Biden had been doing, and Joe Biden didn't have any right to keep any of those documents. Trump did. And so the lawfare, and any time, and this is why, and I didn't really talk about it that much on the program, but that's why the anti-SLAPP law was so important. It didn't pass in last year's legislative session, but it would have banned strategic lawsuits against, essentially against the First Amendment. So what happens is a group like the Attorney General in New Jersey just files a lawsuit, and they try to come up with an argument to shut you up or to stop whatever it is that you're doing. And most people don't have the money needed to defend a lawsuit. And so they just stop what they're doing. Well, that piece of legislation would have prevented that. And I hope that Representative Ottman brings that again because it's extraordinarily important. Now, of course, it's going to have a hard time in the Wyoming Senate simply because it's run by a bunch of redcoats. And I'm so sick of the argument. Oh, no, it's Bo Beitman. It's Dennis Beitman that is the president of the Senate. Yeah, well, it was also Dennis Beitman that gave 7 of the 10 committees to the liberals, which that bill would have to go through committee. He made an alliance with people like Senator Slithers, Tara Nethercott, who pretty much controls what happens on the floor. So don't tell me that it's conservatives that run the Senate. It's not. Stop lying to people. But, like I say, if that SLAPP law can make it through the House, which that'll be no problem. Now, getting it on the floor, that might be a problem because it would require a 2/3 vote. And that's another interesting thing that we haven't talked about. Hey, you know what? Let's go ahead and take our second break. And when we come back, I'll go over that whole situation because it's going to be fascinating to watch. Conservatives don't have the votes to stop what they're doing. So it's going to be a fascinating session. We'll talk about it in just a second. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Hunting season. Right about now, you're off with all of your pals, stalking the big gigantic elk or buck mule deer that you've been thinking about all summer long. And your lovely wife is at home, probably enjoying her time without you. But soon, my friend, all of that is going to come to a screeching halt. And I want you to think about just one little thing. She's able to park her car inside the garage because all of your hunting crap is with you right now. Now, if you'd like the marital bliss to continue, I suggest you make a call to Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They can build you a garage or a barn or any other type of metal structure for you to store all of your toys in so that your wife can continue parking inside the garage. And you can avoid sleeping on the couch for the next month or two. Call Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Get them to build you a metal building before it's too late. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on a Thursday. I'm David Iverson, documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. My friends, the Democrats can't identify what a man is or what a woman is or what anything else is, but they can sure identify what a boat is. It's absolutely incredible. Perhaps they are not completely unobservant. Now, the budget session is coming up in a couple of months, and if I'm not mistaken, the Legislative Service Office has already started numbering bills for the next session. And you know, the budget session is interesting because whatever is not budget related has to have a 2/3 majority to, and they've already started numbering bills. That's what I was looking for, my friends. So I'll have to go through all of those bills and see which ones are interesting. But here's how it works. So the budget session in Wyoming, you have a 20-day session, which is that one that's coming up, and then you have a 40-day session. That was known as the general session. Well, in the budget session, in order for something that is not budget related to hit the floor, you have to have a 2/3 vote. So 2/3 of the whatever chamber it originates in have to agree. Yep, we're going to talk about this. But the conservatives, we don't have enough votes to push anything through that we want. The Democrats and the redcoats are in the same position that conservatives were last budget session. So they don't have the votes to pass anything, but anything they don't want to talk about, they can sure as heck stop it in the House of Representatives, and so, or in the Senate, whichever chamber that bill originates in. And so it's going to be an interesting session to watch to see what bills the redcoats let through and which ones they don't. And considering the last budget session, conservatives killed 13 committee bills just right out of the gate. Nope. Not going to talk about those during the budget session, and there was a giant uproar in the media. The Cowboy, the Pravda, Wyophile, they all wrote articles about how evil conservatives are. How dare you not want to talk about something that is completely unrelated to the budget? And so it might be pretty interesting to see what happens, what bills make it through, which ones don't. So while I've got it pulled up, let's just go ahead and take a look at some of the bills. And I'm just going to read you some of the titles. Wait a minute. There's a Medicaid expansion bill. I bet that's what it is. Anyway, let's see here. Fast track permits, Wyoming pregnancy centers, autonomy and rights, birthing rights centers, oil and gas bonding, eminent domain, protection of nuclear facilities. Gee, I wonder what that one's about. Let's see here. What else? There's a whole bunch of them. Landowner hunting licenses, subleasing of state lands, burials of indigent veterans, Wyoming National Guard member referral amendments, fentanyl, theft amendments, let's see here, sexually explicit materials in libraries. So they're just now starting, and I mean, there's not a lot of them that have been numbered. But this is usually a pretty interesting time for me on the program because, you know, I get to go through and analyze all the bills that are coming before they ever hit the floor. So fascinating time, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about them. As we get closer to the budget session, we're going to I'll be going through a lot of them with you and just, So anyway, another piece about So-called pregnancy centers. And this is on the other side of things. So an Obama judge blocked Trump from cutting funds to Planned Parenthood in 22 states. Why we even give money to abortion centers, I will never understand. It's not something that needs to be state funded. There is nowhere in the Constitution that even talks about abortion. It's not in the Equal Protection Clause. It's not in the Good and Plenty Clause or anything like that. But we do give a tremendous amount of money to them. Well, Trump stopped that, and now, go figure, an Obama-appointed judge has said, no, you have to give taxpayer dollars to kill little babies. Here's what the piece says. This is from The Blaze. A federal judge in Boston issued a preliminary injunction against the Trump administration cutting federal funds to Planned Parenthood in 22 states on Tuesday. U.S. District Judge Indira Talwani in Boston sided with a group of Democratic state attorneys general who had filed a suit against the provision in the president's One Big Beautiful Bill. Quote, we won a court order stopping the federal government from playing politics with our healthcare system. All right. Well, that assumes first that killing something is healthcare. It's actually the exact opposite if you look at the definition. The same judge also blocked the cutting of abortion funds in July, but an appeals court later allowed the cuts to continue while the lawsuit progressed. The former order was criticized, quote, as an unjust judicial activism by Lila Rose of the Live Action Pro-Life group. Planned Parenthood said that at least 20 clinics had shut down since the order to cut funding was renewed during appeal. It argued that as many as 200 centers would shut down if the order was allowed to stand. Good. Alexis Johnson, CEO of Planned Parenthood, argued that the order would reduce availability of other health care provided to women. And that's what they do. I mean, they cover their killing of babies with other pregnancy and, reproductive related care. But mainly what Planned Parenthood does is kill little babies. It's an abortion mill is what they are. And they covered that by saying, oh, no, we provide all sorts of other services. And if you cut funding, all of those services will go away. Never mind that what their real goal is to kill little innocent children. Among those celebrating the order was New York Attorney General, go figure, Letitia James, an avowed opponent of the president. Quote, we won a court order stopping the federal government from playing politics with our health care system and defunding Planned Parenthood, she wrote. We'll continue our lawsuit to defend New Yorkers' health care and reproductive freedom from unconstitutional attacks. All right, so there is nothing in the Constitution that says we have to fund abortions. There's nothing about abortion in the Constitution. There's nothing about forcing any of us to fund anything, really, except, of course, the few things that are mentioned in the Constitution. But abortion, not one of those. Let's see here. Talwani was appointed by the court in 2013 by Barack Obama. Big surprise there. She is also responsible for blocking Trump's cuts to the SNAP program over the government shutdown. The president responded by blaming Democrats for refusing to vote to end the shutdown, as he should, because the Republicans voted 15 times to open the government. The Democrats voted 15 times not to. It's just, this whole abortion fight, it amazes me that anybody thinks that you could kill an innocent human being. And, I know all the arguments back and forth, but you'll never be able to convince me that somehow killing some little baby is at all right. It's not. It ought to be a crime. And, I mean that I don't even think those exceptions work. And let me just run through them real quick. A lot of folks that are squeamish about this say the rape and incest and life of the mother. Let's start with the rape one. That little baby didn't do anything to deserve to be killed. We never punish the victim of a crime for the crime. We punish the offender, and that's what we ought to do with rape. That little baby didn't do anything to deserve to be killed. It's the perpetrator that did that, and too often we don't punish people that rape women, and we should. Instead of killing little babies who did nothing except it did nothing to, precipitate their birth. They have constitutional rights too, and there's no way that you can argue that a little baby is not a human baby. I mean, it's just not possible. I've had several guests on the program. Rod Miller was one of them. We had a pretty serious debate about this several years ago. Yeah, we don't punish the victim of a crime for a crime. We punish the criminal. Incest, same argument. I mean, that's a hard, horrible situation there. And the argument is always, well, what about young children who are raped? Yeah, I understand that that's horrible. But moving to the next one, this kind of focuses on the other one. So, life of the mother. That's not a question of abortion. That's a question of triage. A couple of things there. First, those situations are very, very, very rare. That in a pregnancy, a woman passes away. Medical technology has advanced to such a place where that's really not a concern. And even if it were, that's not a question of abortion. That's a question of triage. When doctors go to a car wreck or EMTs go to a car wreck, they don't ask themselves, well, is this a baby? Is this a woman? Or no, they don't ask any of those questions. It's who can I save first? Who do I have the best job of saving? The same holds true in the hospital. If both of them are at risk, the question is, who can I save? Who do I have the best chance of saving? It's a question of triage. It's not a question of abortion. So I don't even think any of those exceptions are acceptable. I don't think you get to choose who lives and who dies, and I don't think you get a choice of whose constitutional rights you can violate and whose you can't. I find the whole thing absolutely criminal, and I see no reason whatsoever that we should in any way even have that. And it's I actually find it offensive when people say, "Oh, it's a woman's choice." No, it's not. You made your choice. You're the one that hopped in the sack. You should have made that choice before you did that. And it's not your choice anyway. It's an innocent human being. That's it. Period. End of sentence. We wouldn't be having this conversation if the child was 2. Nope. It's only when they're unborn, and it's absolutely monstrous. And this country has killed over 63 million babies. It's absolutely, and we're going to pay for that at some point, my friends. God will not hold us blameless for that. And so anyway, I'd love to debate anybody that thinks that abortion's okay. You can come on the program and we'll talk about it. But you're not going to convince me, nor do I think that you're going to convince the vast majority of this audience. But anyway, from the Federalist. And this one kind of goes to what we started out the program with. From the Federalist. After the Charlie Kirk assassination, 9 in 10 college kids still think that real violence is words. Mm-hmm. When I was growing up, it was sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Yeah. It's because words aren't violence. No, that's a leftist lie. Quote from the Federalist. Even in the wake of the assassination of Charlie Kirk, 91% of college students still believe, 91% believe that words can actually be considered violence. And a growing number of college students also believe that real physical violence can be used to shut down speech. So in other words, if you don't like what somebody's saying, you can smack them around or physically throw them out of, a venue or whatever. A new survey from the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression tested college students' views on speech in the aftermath of Kirk's assassination, finding an overwhelming 91% majority equated words with violence, and a still massive 79% majority expressed some degree of disagreement with the belief that silence, saying nothing, can be a form of violence as well. Put another way, only 9% of college students in America believe that words are not violence, and only 21% believe that you do not need to parrot politically correct propaganda in order to be considered nonviolent. Those numbers need to be understood in the context of nearly 40% of college students agreeing with the statement, quote, if someone is using hate speech or making racially charged comments, physical violence can be justified to prevent this person from espousing their hateful views, according to the 2025 survey from the Buckley Institute. FIRE, so in capitals, has tracked a similar phenomenon, finding that in 2020, about 20% of students justified violence in response to speech. And in 2024, that number had increased to about 34%. The new survey saw only a slight decrease to 32% of students supporting political violence to stop a speaker. In the organization's new report, 48% of students believe it is, quote, always or sometimes or rarely acceptable to be able to physically prevent students from going to a campus speech. Only a bare majority of 53% said that doing so is never acceptable. Meanwhile, 75% of students said shutting down a speaker is acceptable, only down 1 point from a spring survey. Now, this is a shocking survey, my friends, that college students who, and one of the reasons why you attend college is to learn how to think critically, to ask critical questions, and to be challenged. To have to take a class that maybe you don't agree with the professor, but that's part of a learning environment. And in life, you're not going to always run into, you're probably rarely going to run into people that agree with you all of the time. You should be challenged. You should learn how to defend the views that you have. And the only way that you can do that is by engaging with people with whom you disagree. I've made it a point this year on Cowboy State Politics to have people on the program that I profoundly disagree with. And frankly, I think that one of the best interviews that I had this year was with Trey Sherwood, the Democrat, who, and we had a ball on the program. I thought it was so much fun to go back and forth with her and debate. And I don't think that we solved anything, but at least we were able to have a discussion. And in the same vein, I also enjoyed having Mike Yen and Carly Provenza in the studio. That one was a little bit more tense. I had fun, but I enjoy the activity of debating. But we have to be able to sit down and disagree. That's the only way that you come up with a solution. And to say that, if you disagree with somebody, that means that you can, engage in violence is absolutely shocking. And that 91% of college students, at least according to this survey, said that 91% of students believe that words can actually be violence is pretty shocking, considering that it was Charlie Kirk who was assassinated, that is, shot, actual violence on campus, on a Utah campus. So we are in an incredible place. And I think for those of us who are in the media, it is incumbent upon us to have conversations with those people that we fundamentally disagree with, to be able to sit down and have an intelligent debate and engage in a battle of ideas and not end up pulling pistols on each other. And it just blows my mind. When I go to Cheyenne, we're going to set up a studio. And the whole point is to be able to have a nightly news broadcast. Hey, here's what happened during the day. And I'm going to open the invitation up to anybody. Hey, you want to just come over to the studio and we'll sit down and talk. We'll talk about what happened during the day, your votes, etc. And I'm going to open it up to everybody. And you want to come down, you want to sit and match words with me, we can do that. But that's because I believe in free speech and I believe in the power of ideas. That the only way that we find truth is in debating. And sometimes you don't ever find truth. But if you are going to be in politics, if you're going to be a rational human being, you need to believe that ideas are just that they're ideas, that they don't hurt anybody. It doesn't hurt a single soul to be disagreed with. In fact, I would say that if you are never disagreed with, a great disservice has been done to you. That you're never challenged on those things that you believe. And it's fascinating. We went to a homeowners association meeting a couple of weeks ago, and I was blown away at the reaction to just people simply disagreeing. The folks that were up in the head of the room, they cut the meeting off short in their first opportunity because some of the folks were disagreeing with them. Well, that's the whole point. That's why we have deliberative bodies. That's why we get together and debate things. That's how our system was set up. Do you think that everybody at the Constitutional Convention agreed on everything? Nuh-uh. It was Benjamin Franklin who several times said, okay, we're not getting anywhere, perhaps we need to sit down and pray. And, maybe we can figure this out. Let's call it a day. Let's pray. And we'll pick this up in the morning. But being challenged, debating, being forced to defend those things that you believe, that's part of being human. And you have to be able to do that. And, I am one of those people that I believe in the power of ideas. You'll never convince me that, the usefulness of debate has gone away. I have a big disagreement with one of my favorite conservatives. Over and over and over, I've said, hey, look, if you just make the right argument, you can convince these people. And he's often said to me, no, David, the time of debate is over. We used to be able to flip votes. Now we can't. I disagree with that. I think that people can still be persuaded. And in fact, I'm convinced that you can still persuade people to your side, and you're doing them a disservice when you don't, at the very least, try. So a couple over the Thanksgiving holiday, 2 National Guard servicemen were shot, and I'm sure many of us are still reeling from that horrible event, but not the media. No, from the post-millennial, NPR is now claiming that the D.C. National Guard shooting suspect was not radicalized. No, he wasn't radicalized at all. He was going through a, quote, personal crisis, and I quote. The report from NPR has claimed that the Afghan national, who's been charged with shooting 2 National Guardsmen in Washington, D.C. last week, appeared to suffer from a personal crisis in his life leading up to the shooting and had not been radicalized. He has been charged with the murder of Sarah Beckstrom, the guardsman who died on Thanksgiving, the day after the shooting. Andrew Wolf, the other officer, is still in critical condition. So the shooter, Rahmanullah Lockenwall, came to the U.S. under the Biden administration and was unable to gain asylum in the country. After spending time in the U.S., a resettlement volunteer who worked with the family has said that he was likely in personal crisis and was prone to taking cross-country drives without informing his family. Wait a minute. So this guy was often, he would just hop in his car and drive all the way across the country without telling his family. Clearly, there was something wrong with him. Clearly, my friends. Let's see here. My biggest concern was that, so hold on. Why is NPR saying that, he was just suffering from a personal crisis? Why is it that they're making that argument? Well, because if he's not radicalized, then it's not a question of illegal immigration. It's a question of social services. That it's not the problem with illegal immigration that created this whole situation. No. This is something else entirely. That this has very little to do with any of the problems on the southern border. That, my friends, is ridiculous. The guy was an illegal immigrant. He was radicalized. He did shout Allahu Akbar when he shot those 2 officers. So, he was a radical. Let's see here. Officials with the Trump administration also believe that Lockenwall was radicalized while he was in the U.S. Kristi Noem said that, quote, we do believe it was through connections in his home community and state, and we're going to continue to talk to those who interacted with him. The volunteer could not point to a possible motive behind the attack. Before he came to the U.S., the Afghan national served in an elite military and CIA-backed unit called the Zero Unit, which coordinated with the U.S. to fight the Taliban. I have another story in the stack of stuff about some of those people that assisted us. Let me just look here. In Afghanistan, our allies, so to speak. How many times did one of those people slip through in the security perimeter or whatever and detonate a bomb? How often did that happen? Well, I mean, it was fairly regularly. There was those 13 that were killed when we were. Here we go. So this is what I wanted to talk about right here. So this guy, he was with the Zero Unit in Afghanistan, helping us fight the Taliban. Now, what I'm about to show you, I'm not going to tell you that these are, texts from him, because they're not. The people that these tweets are referring to were not this guy, as far as I know. But I just want to give you, a sense of what some of these Afghanistan allies have done to us. And all of these are coming from an article in the Post Millennial, and it's entitled "Come Read How Veterans Explain Their Dealings with Afghan Allies to Illustrate Why They Shouldn't Be in America." And let's see here. Here we go. Okay. Yeah. All right. So here's the first one. I'm going to make this full screen so you can see it. Let's see here. Slideshow from current slide. Okay, here we go. This one says, no, I think I just deleted off that. Yes, I did. No, I didn't. There we go. Okay, well, let's try this one more time. This is why I need a producer, my friends, just so I don't have to fumble around with this and he can do it. Here we go. Allow. All right, so this first one says, yeah, Afghan allies are great. So, in fact, that at the height of the green-blue during GWAT, so the Global War on Terror, we had to start using guardian angels. So even when talking with our friends, we'd have to have armed guards standing watch. Yeah, they were great, all right, as long as you had a loaded weapon visible to them. Do you have any idea how ridiculous it was to be on guard for the Taliban and friendly Afghans inside the wire? Guess what? Those allies were vetted too. You can't vet a society where identity itself isn't recorded. And what they're talking about is, a lot of the people that we're dealing with, they really didn't have, it wasn't possible to vet them. Here's another one. I watched as one of these folks try to kill another one over some historical beef between tribes and ended up killing a Brit in the crossfire. Fantastic. Another one. We gave a guy 400 grand in USAID money to start a women's shelter. Yeah, I'm sure that was going to work out great in Afghanistan. Anyway, we returned a few weeks later to find out he'd moved to Pakistan with the money. Here's another horrendous one, talking about raping a 13-year-old prostitute. So these are some of the folks that our soldiers were dealing with in Afghanistan. And it's at least halfway clear that this guy was of the same vein. I mean, he yelled Allahu Akbar when he shot those two National Guardsmen. He was clearly radicalized, and the reason why NPR is claiming that he wasn't, that it was a personal problem, he had a personal crisis he was dealing with, is that it goes to Trump's argument about illegal immigration, that we do in fact have an illegal immigrant problem in this country. And thankfully, Trump is carrying out his promise he made during both campaigns, frankly. Build the wall and let's get all these people out of our country. Because, I mean, there are millions and millions of people, many of whom we have no idea who they are. And that's during the very difficult episode on Tuesday. Again, my apologies for that one. But I started out the program likening this to a dinner at your house. You wouldn't set up a dinner and just invite every Tom, Dick, and Harry, people that you didn't know, into your home to sit down and have dinner. You wouldn't do that. You don't know if they're going to attack you, steal your stuff, copy down the code for the door, be light-fingered on the way out. You have no idea. You wouldn't do that. You don't invite people to dinner that you don't know. But that's what we're doing with immigration. We've opened the door up and invited people into our home, and we have no idea who they are. We have no idea what they're going to do. If they're going to kill us or rob us, we don't have any idea. And frankly, there's probably terrorist cells all over the country that Biden let into the country, and that we just don't. I mean, there's no way possible that we could figure out who these people are. And so, if you're in the country illegally, you got to go, my friends. You wouldn't do that in your own home. You shouldn't do that in your own country. I mean, it just blows my mind. Now, we haven't talked, at least lately, about what our pal Zoran Mamdani is doing in New York. And, if you thought that maybe, just maybe, it was campaign rhetoric that he was using to get elected and that he really wasn't going to go through with all this stuff, oh, my friends, you are sorely mistaken. Check out the guy that he just hired from the Washington Free Beacon. Mamdani taps felon who served 7 years for robbing New York City taxi drivers, as his, quote, criminal legal system advisor. So he's put him in a high-ranking role in his mayoral administration. Yeah, if you thought things were going to go well in New York, man, were you wrong. Mayor-elect Zoran Mamdani tapped a convicted felon who served 7 years for a string of armed robberies targeting New York City taxi drivers to advise him on the criminal legal system. Mizone Lennon, a rapper turned social justice activist, will serve on Mamdani's criminal legal system committee, one of 17 committees that Mamdani created to help transition into his administration. He said the appointees, quote, will be tasked with not only making personnel recommendations, but policy recommendations. So you have a felon, a convicted felon, a thief, who is the guy who's going to be telling you, hey, this is the policy that you should really consider. All these people in prison, they're really not that bad. No, they're just misunderstood. And this prison, well, it's actually pretty hard. I mean, can you imagine the conversations that are going to happen? The ridiculousness that's going to come out of Mamdani's administration. Well, this guy, I've got a picture of him here. Let's just see if I can do this again. That's the first picture I showed you, but let's see here. Well, he is, the radical that you would expect. In fact, he has some of his own associations that we might find questionable. Here he is with Louis Farrakhan. Oh, yeah. Yeah, see, that's the guy right there that's going to be in Mamdani's administration, sitting with an avowed Muslim racist. Isn't that incredible? Yeah. I mean, it's going to work out fantastic, I'm sure. Let's see here. Lennon served 7 years in prison for armed robberies in 97 and 98. He was part of a group of men who robbed cab driver Joseph Aziri in June of 97 and hit him with a beer bottle. The New York City Daily News reported at the time. Prosecutors alleged that Lennon held up cabbie Francisco Monsanto at gunpoint in March of 98, stealing jewelry and cash. Both drivers identified Lennon as the stick-up man at trial. He declined a one-year plea deal offer and was convicted in July of 99 on weapons possession and felony robbery. The conviction came weeks before Lennon was slated to appear on a rap album with hip-hop heavyweights Busta Rhymes and LL Cool J. Mamdani, who has called taxi drivers the unsung heroes of New York City, has made other controversial additions to his team. Lumumba Bendele, a community organizer behind campaigns to free several black nationalists convicted of murdering police officers. That's a fantastic appointment there. Will serve on Mamdani's community organizing committee. Mamdani picked Alex Vitale, the author of The End of Policing. That is a fantastic read, I'm sure. To serve on his community safety committee. Wait a minute. So the person who wrote the book that says we should get rid of cops is the same person who's going to advise him on community safety. Tell me how that's going to work out. Tamika Mallory was booted from the Women's March in 2019 amid allegations of anti-Semitism. Well, we know that Mamdani is an anti-Semite, so no reason to assume that he wouldn't appoint those same people. She will also serve on the safety committee. Now, it's unclear why Mamdani selected the criminal former rapper, though the former rapper recently said he met with Mamdani a few times. Maybe he'll be a liaison to the rap community. Who knows? Lennon confronted an activist group Until Freedom, called Until Freedom, with Mallory and Linda Sarsour. Linda Sarsour is the head of CARE. That's the woman that I showed you the video of that said the Council on American Islamic Relations. They are the Free Palestine radicals. Yeah, the folks that are rioting in the streets, funding all of that. That's Linda Sarsour. An anti-Israel activist and early Mamdani backer. Until Freedom is behind the We Ain't Buying It campaign, which urges black consumers to boycott Target, Amazon, and Home Depot for enabling various Trump administration policies. You see, this guy isn't a faker. No, he is definitely going to do what he said. Leave New York while you still can. Just leave your voting there. Let's see here. Now, Lennon met with Louis Farrakhan after Donald Trump's election in 2016, writing afterwards, quote, that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has inspired and motivated me. His unapologetic leadership is what we need in this time. This is the time for warriors to prepare for war. Yeah. Let's see here. He made other controversial statements over the years. Quote, "The white man has killed, raped, and destroyed my culture," he wrote. "I've been taught since birth and witnessed that white people hate me. Do you understand the reality of a black man in America?" He's hurled anti-gay slurs in other posts. I can't even read that one on the air. But he has maintained his innocence in the armed robbery cases, claiming in 2017 that I didn't do what I was locked up for. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of innocent people that are in prison right now. Absolutely incredible. Mom Donnie's transition team did not respond, weird, to a request for comment. Let's go ahead and take our last break, and when we come back, we'll finish up the program. It's Ilhan Omar up next. Yay! Yeah, I know. The weather seems to be toying with us. 60 one day, 42 the next, and pretty soon, my friends, those 6s and 4s are going to turn into 3s and 2s. Though we all want to avoid it, that white stuff is coming, my friends, and you will be shoveling the walk in it. It's cold, it's unpleasant, and nobody likes to do it. But you could make it just a little bit more comfortable and prevent your feet from turning into a giant block of ice. In fact, you could keep them nice and warm and toasty, and your toes will never even know that they're outside. The rest of you may be frozen solid, but at least your feet won't be. To make all this happen, you just need a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listen to the president just a little bit too closely and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy State Politics is only going to get stronger. This program is only going to continue to expand. I gotta tell you, my friends, I can hardly believe how many people are watching Cowboy State Politics. And thank you for watching, my friends. Thank you for participating in the program. Thank you for doing everything that you do. It's incredible what we've been able to accomplish the last 6 years. And yesterday was the season 6 premiere of Cowboy State Politics, both on the podcast. Well, I mean, we haven't been doing the live program for 6 years. I mean, that one is just, well, I don't know. I mean, the actual full-blown live program Yeah, that's been just about a year. We started it in the new studio April 1st, and I think I was doing it probably for another year before then. But anyway, season 6, man, I'm looking forward to it. Gearing up to go down to Cheyenne. It's going to be a blast. So from the New York Post, Ilhan Omar, I know you've been looking forward to this. Talk about somebody that doesn't need to be in our country. In order to get her citizenship papers, she married her brother. That's absolutely true. I don't know how that was. I don't know what type of person officiated the service, if it was a judge or whatever. But shame on them. You can't marry your brother and get citizenship. And who didn't look at those citizenship documents before signing on the dotted line and approving all of that? It had to be a scam from the very beginning, and if you are if it's questionable whether or not you're a citizen, you shouldn't be able to run for Congress. I mean, you have to be a citizen to be in Congress, and we definitely fumbled the ball on that one, my friends. From the New York Post, ungrateful Ilhan Omar and the Somali scammers are the immigrants we don't want. And obviously it's an opinion page, but I happen to agree with them. And just so you know who we're dealing with, here is Ilhan Omar, how much she absolutely loves America. This is a member of Congress.
I grew up in a dictatorship. And I don't even remember ever witnessing anything like that. To have a democracy, a beacon of hope for the world to now be turned into one of the worst countries where the military are in our streets without any regard for people's constitutional rights.
Wow. One of the worst countries where people don't even have any constitutional rights. Can you? Oh my God. That is a member of Congress. But is it too much to ask that those folks who are in America actually love the country that they're in? You would think that ought to be a prerequisite to be here. But apparently it's not, because she got elected. And I guess, maybe... No, it's the same soundbite I've got. I was looking for other Ilhan Omar sound bites in the audio archive. But, again, this is who her constituents represented. And I've recently, we've talked a lot about how there's a big Somali population in Minnesota. In fact, the mayor of Minneapolis gave his victory speech in Somali. So if that tells you anything. But is it too much to ask for immigrants who love America and its system of government? I mean, is it too much to say that, hey, if you want to come to this country, you ought to actually like the place that you're living? But the truth is, we've let a lot of people into this country that fundamentally hate it and that will work to our destruction. That the reason that they came in the country was not a matter of because they wanted to make a better life and live in a country that they adore. Rather, it was to work against the country and destroy it. So that's the question that the president has been asking, with an especially high level of vitriol in the wake of the horrific shooting of members in the National Guard in Washington, D.C. In a corker of a Truth Social post announcing a permanent pause in immigration from third world countries, Trump went after Minneapolis area Representative Ilhan Omar for good reason. Omar stands for everything we shouldn't want an immigrant to be: ungrateful, hostile to the American system, and as such, and perhaps not above perpetuating immigration fraud. Maybe the next time that Omar is a refugee from a war-torn, desperately poor African country looking for a safe haven in the West, she should try, Canada or maybe even Australia. After fleeing the civil war in Somalia, Omar was granted asylum in the U.S. in the 90s and lived for a time in one of the most desirable suburban communities in the country, in Arlington, Virginia, outside of Washington, D.C., before settling in Minneapolis. Why she chose Minneapolis over Arlington, who knows? In the course of her successful life here, so far from Mogadishu, in a country characterized by its peace, prosperity, and opportunity, one would have thought that she'd have steadily accumulated a debt of gratitude. Most heritage Americans, that's us, by the way, after all, never become members of Congress or enjoy a net worth as high as $30 million. And that's another contradiction. If your net worth is $30 million, perhaps you should be grateful for the country that allowed you to become so wealthy. But too often, the folks that we allow into our country and that we allow to become enormously wealthy are not here to serve the best interests of America, but rather to do the opposite. In Omar's version, a Washington Post profile noted a few years ago, quote, America wasn't the big-hearted country that saved her from a brutal war and a bleak refugee camp. It wasn't a meritocracy that helped her attend college or vaulted her into Congress. Instead, it was the country that had failed to live up to its founding ideals, a place that had disappointed her and so many immigrants, refugees, and minorities like her. Holy crap. Then why come here? It's because the place you're from is an S-hole. It is a crappy place to live, and America is not. So why not come here? Well, I mean, if you want to come here and succeed, great. If not, I'll show you the door. It's not that she came here with nothing and is now a person of prestige in some circles. And she may well have gotten away with the scheme a few years ago to marry her brother for fraudulent purposes. She hotly denies that the man she briefly married was her brother, but has never managed to definitively rebut the charges, relying instead on accusations of racism to scare away. Yeah, you're a racist if you think I married my brother. What? Absolutely insane. The same thought might have occurred to those members of a Somali diaspora in Minnesota who engaged in a gigantic grift of the state's social services fund to the tune of billions of dollars. Prosecutors believe that more than $1 billion has been stolen in a variety of different plots. The perpetrators stole from programs intended to provide meals to hungry children during the pandemic, services to the homeless, and therapy for autistic children. At least these members of the Somali diaspora must have been grateful. Probably not. They're probably friends of Ilhan Omar. It's one thing to look a gift horse in the mouth. It's another to steal the incisors and molars when you think no one is looking. And that is exactly what Ilhan Omar has done. In my opinion, if she's not a legal citizen, deport her butt back to Somalia. And by the way, take the assets that she probably, illegitimately earned on her way out the door. But it's not racist, as Ilhan Omar claims, to call what happened in Minnesota fraud. That's not racist at all. That's calling a spade a spade. And when you have people who are engaging in graft, that's theft. It's theft from you and it's theft from me. And we shouldn't tolerate it. And even if in some twisted way some of that theft comes out to be perfectly legal, that doesn't make it right. It doesn't mean that you can contort the law in a way that provides you and your pals millions of dollars, and somehow you can make the argument that you're creating affordable housing. If you're doing it underhandedly, that's theft, my friends. The reason why we have a legislature is to correct those problems. Now, of course, we can't do an ex post facto law, so whatever theft you engaged in that may have been legal at the time, we can't just retroactively say that that's illegal. But it's not racist, nor is it any other ism to call things what they are, to speak plainly. And that's what we haven't done in this country for a very long time, is just to speak plainly, to call a spade, because there's all of these other isms floating around that get thrown at you, and it ends up scaring people. I don't want to be called a racist, so I'm not going to be critical of Ilhan Omar. I don't want people to say that I hate poor people, so I'm not going to be critical of so-called affordable housing. And the list goes on and on. We have to speak the truth, my friends, and the only way that you can do that is to speak it bluntly and clearly. The recent scandal, and this is from The Blaze, in Minnesota reveals an uncomfortable truth. Different cultures lead to different outcomes. This is the problem with multiculturalism that I've been talking about on this program for a very long time. Last week, my colleague Ryan Thorpe broke a story about widespread fraud committed by Somalis in Minnesota. Members of the state's Somali community allegedly participated in complex schemes related to autism services, food programs, and housing, which prosecutors estimate to have stolen billions of dollars. Even worse, some of the cash has ended up in the hands of Al-Shabaab, a terrorist organization in Somalia. That's just fantastic. The story quickly reached the White House, and within days, President Trump announced that he was revoking the temporary protected status for all Somali immigrants in Minnesota. So if you're not a citizen, if you're not here legally, there's the door. Get the heck out. Now, progressives have suggested that reporting and subsequent policy change were racist. It's not racist to call it what it is. If it walks like a donkey and talks like a donkey and votes like a jackass, it's a Democrat. Let's call it what it is. While many of those indicted in these schemes are Somali, these critics argue the federal government should not hold the Minnesota Somali community corporately responsible for the actions of individuals. Now, I agree with that. It is not the entire community. If we're going to be precise, let's say, hey, you're a criminal. You're the one that's been stealing. Let's prosecute you. It's not just because you're friends with somebody that we need to prosecute them. It's not. We don't live in a country we live in a country of laws. We don't live in a country of men. Now, the criticism of saying, hey, that's racist is superficially appealing, but it isn't persuasive at all. First, a description of the facts should not be measured as racist or not racist. Facts are facts. They're not racist. They're not sexist. They're not misogynist. A fact is just that. It's a fact. But rather as true or not true. And that's the difference. There isn't an ism surrounded. It is either true or it isn't. And in this case, the truth is that numerous members of a relatively small community participated in a scheme that stole billions in taxpayer funds. This is a legitimate consideration for American immigration policy, which is organized around nation of origin and for more than 30 years has favorably treated Somalis relative to other groups. It is more than fair to ask whether that policy has served the national interest. The fraud story suggests that the answer to that question is no. But if it is a policy to bring an entire group of people here, first we have to do some vetting. We have to find out that you are who you say you are, and perhaps that's the biggest failure out of this entire thing, that we don't ask those questions. It's just we just bring you in because you say that you can come in. That was the Biden policy. Second, the fact that Somalis are black is just incidental to this. It has nothing to do with whether they're fraudsters or not. If Norwegian immigrants were perpetrating a fraud at the same alleged scale and had the same employment and income statistics as Somalis, it would be perfectly reasonable to make the same criticism and enact the same policy response. It would not be racist against Norwegians to do so. Think about all of the organized crime. We often look at the Italian community as members of the mafia, but that does not mean that all Italians are members of the mafia. Let's just speak facts here. If you're committing a crime, you're a criminal. That doesn't mean that your whole community is, and it's not racist to say that, hey, this Somali immigrant over here is a criminal. That's not racist. Those are facts. Further, Somalis have enormously high unemployment rates. The federal law enforcement has long considered Minneapolis's Little Mogadishu neighborhood a hotspot for terrorism recruitment. We should condemn that behavior without regard to skin color. Again, it doesn't have anything to do with what color your skin is. It's whether you're a criminal or not. The underlying question, which until now Americans have been loath to address directly, is that different behaviors and outcomes between different groups. Americans tend to avoid this question. We rely on euphemisms, that is, words that mean the same thing but sound better. It's the difference between the Holocaust versus ethnic cleansing or whatever. One sounds better than the other. It's a euphemism. And let these distinctions remain implied rather than spoken aloud. Yet it seems increasingly untenable to maintain this Anglo-American courtesy when the left has spent decades insisting that we conceptualize our national life in terms of group identity. The reality is that different groups have different cultural characteristics, and that is absolutely the truth. And when you look at some immigrant communities like the Somali community, it is absolutely a fact that there is a high rate of terrorism recruitment that's going on there. There is a high rate of fraud. Those things are facts. It has nothing to do with their skin color. It's just an adjective. Hey, it's that community, and look at the facts. Here's how many are there. Here's how many are fraudsters. You make up your own mind. The beauty of America is that we had a system that thoughtfully balanced individual and group considerations. We recognize that all men, whatever their background, have a natural right to life, liberty, and property and equal treatment under law. We also recognize that group averages can be a basis for judgment, especially in immigration, where they can help determine which potential immigrant groups are most suitable and advantageous for America. And see, we've gotten away from the immigration policy that you have to bring something to the table for us to let you in. If you want to be part of the club, you need to bring something to the club. That is, if you're a doctor or an engineer or, you're an expert in some other field, or you add something to the collective good, the collective whole. Just to get to come in because you want to come in. You're going to come in because you're going to bring something to the table. That is the policy that we should be focusing on, not this just ad hoc, anybody that wants to walk through the door to come to Thanksgiving dinner can come on in. That's not how you run your house, nor should we run our country that way. These principles are in tension, but not in contradiction. As a sociological matter, a policy of equal rights for all individuals will result in unequal outcomes among groups. This is not a sign of injustice per se. It is an inevitability. In America, you have an equal opportunity to succeed. That does not mean that you have an equal opportunity of outcome. It has a lot to do with how much work you put into it, how hard you work, how good your work product is. Those are the determining factors of whether or not you're going to succeed or not. It doesn't have anything to do with your skin color. Everybody here has an equal opportunity to advance and be part of the collective American society. Bring something to the table, and who knows, you might be able to have the $30 million in the bank like Ilhan Omar does, however she got it. The firestorm around the Somali fraud story was so intense precisely because it forced this question into the spotlight. For decades, America has given Somali immigrants, and it's not just Somali immigrants. Okay, this is the example that we're dealing with right now. We've given them special privileges through the temporary protected status. We've expected Somalis to play by the rules, contribute to the country, and assimilate into the culture. But we know that hasn't happened. Little Mogadishu, for example. Some individuals have certainly done so, but as the fraud story suggests, many others have not. A rational government would amend its policies accordingly, and we should. There's no reason why just because you have done something in the past means that we should continue doing that. That doesn't make any sense. In fact, it's a logical fallacy. But we've got to get a handle on our immigration policies, which means at the national level and which means at the state level. We are dealing with an illegal immigrant problem in Wyoming. We're dealing with an immigrant problem in every community. It was just, last week that the Laramie County Sheriff arrested 40 illegal aliens on I-80, most of whom could not speak English. So tell me that we don't have an illegal alien problem. There for a while, even in Sheridan, it was pretty, it was pretty commonplace to see newspaper reports that say, this person, a resident of Venezuela, tried to rob an ATM. Every state is a border state now, my friends, and that is an inescapable reality. But we've got to get back to this idea of American exceptionalism, that the whole point of all of this is to create a country that is, by definition, absolutely exceptional. That we add, it's kind of like we're the Borg a little bit. We add the good parts of your culture to our culture, and it makes ours better. It's not that we set up individual communities for individual groups of people. That's multiculturalism. That never works, my friends. It hasn't worked in the past, and it will not work in the future. And so until we as Americans decide that we can start stating facts, that it is a fact that this group of people does this. Not everybody, but the folks that are committing the fraud, yeah, that's a fact. We've got to get away from being resistant to saying the truth simply because we might be called racist or sexist or misogynist or whatever ist. You have to have the courage of your convictions, and if you don't, you're nothing better than a bump on a log. We've got to get to stating facts, my friends, which is what I try to do on Cowboy State Politics. That's why I started this program, because I was sick of the bullcrap in the media. I'm still sick of the bullcrap in the media. And that's why I've realized we've got to expand this program. We've got to do something that is that moves the needle further to not to the right, to the middle. I'm not speaking ideologically. I'm saying let's create some balance in the media. Let's give people a choice in the information that they consume. That's what this program is all about. There are lots of people that watch this program that don't agree with everything I say, or agree with most of what I say, but they still watch it because we're in a battle of ideas. That the reason you listen to this program is because this is the conservative program in Wyoming. And so the reason you hear it is to hear a conservative point of view. So anyway, my friends, we've got to get to stating facts in our world, stating things that are true, and we got to stop worrying about being called a racist or a sexist or any other ist. Just say the things that are true. I'll do it, and you keep doing it. So with that, my friends, we've burned up another busy broadcast, 2 hours on the program. It's been fun. Oh, God, I wish I could tell you how much I enjoy doing this program. But thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I'll see you tomorrow for Open Line Friday. Don't forget, let's take some calls tomorrow. Let's have some conversations. So we'll do that tomorrow. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. See you tomorrow, my friends.